Bam!
Good morning.
Bam!
Yes.
You can always tell the difference between the speakers from the different regions. This is like, oh, it's America. Bam!
Yeah. Awesome. I'm trying to do the lower hangout, and I'm just.
Oh, you don't have to do a lower third if you want.
No.
You can if you want. It won't show up during your presentation.
No, that's true. That's fine. Yeah.
How you doing, Peter?
I'm fine, thanks. It's early.
For those people who don't know about people, welcome to kicking off the Americas. For those people who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I've been in ITSM space since the beginning of the 90s. Started at 1990 with ITIL 92, my ITIL Service Manager exam, and since then worked for different companies, first in the Netherlands, and then since 1997 in Canada. Now currently located in Calgary, and I've done always consulting and training in ITSM space, so whatever is available in frameworks.
You've done it all.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
So what do you could talk to us about today?
I'm going to talk a bit about some pragmatic things. One of the things is after 20 years in this field, you start to realize that it's just enough, and sometimes I've have enough. I've done enough. So there's times where I have something like, okay, let's keep this simple. Let's keep it just going and making sure that everything is specifically focused on the pragmatic solutions. And that's one of the challenges I find every single time, is that people try to do too much and go into huge, big projects, etc. And I try to keep things simple. So I want to talk about some of the things I do that are very simple.
Well, go ahead. And I think if you click on the screen share button and select your presentation, I'll go ahead and hide my loveliness. And you can go ahead and start, and then I'll watch for questions.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Here we go. So I hope that you can see this.
I can see it right now. It's still not in full screen, so you might have selected your not your desktop, but your presentation.
Do you see the? Oh, okay. I thought I selected the right one. Sorry.
You're fine. This is actually, yeah, there you go.
Is this better?
Nope, it's still showing a stat. So you might want to unshare the screen, and then go ahead and just click on screen share. I'm going to ask you for what? Are you using a Mac or a PC?
A Mac.
Select desktop. Do you have multiple monitors?
Yes, I do.
Select the desktop that shows you the full screen version of your presentation.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
In my case, it's desktop 1. There you go. And then when you do it full screen, it'll show it. See, on TFT, we do tech support also.
Awesome.
Yeah, we do that. It's a conference and IT as a service. All right, Peter, I'm good out. Be good.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I'm going to talk about just enough, and one of the things is, like I said in the intro, it's sometimes you just need to just do enough that things actually are working. Now, I'm also very excited about this conference spanning the world, and I just saw a tweet actually from someone I know in the Netherlands. So I'll use a few things here as well. I would like to wish my Dutch friends that from the Netherlands still a gezellig Sinterklaas. I know that's tonight, so they might be excited about that. That means really that's the Christmas, but then on December 5th in the Netherlands. The title for this is just enough. In Dutch, it would be net genoeg, just to keep some international things in there. And I wanted to translate it in French, and then I realized I don't really speak French. So so I asked someone, okay, what is just enough? And then they had something like, well, what do you mean? Why are you talking about eggs? And I had something like, what do you mean eggs? And apparently that is kind of the same pronunciation in French, or close to. So, but then I thought about, okay, you know what? Eggs actually is quite a fitting for our industry. It's an industry that is still starting. We have lots of ideas. We have lots of eggs in the basket sometimes. We also try to build something and nurture something that we really say, okay, this is going to be in our ITSM space, and this is what we're doing, and things like this, for instance, as well. This conference is you start to realize that this can be very fragile sometimes, and things can break very easily. So for me, this was a nice fitting image for this. Now, what I'm going to talk about is a couple of things. First, the context for what I'm doing with this presentation. I find a lot of organizations have trouble in figuring out exactly what do I need to focus on. So I'm going to talk a bit about, okay, what is the context currently in the market, and what is the roadmap. I'm showing some specific, simple examples for that, and saying, okay, well, this is what you need to look at. I will talk about some of the fundamentals based on that, and then how you can scale that. I will close off with some points around CSI, which I'm very passionate about. For me, a lot of these projects should start with CSI and not looking at let's build incident, let's build problem, but let's start looking at where do we really need to build the improvements. So we'll start with the context. First thing is that this is one of the charts we use. Years ago I was working with growth consultants for this, and one of the key things is these charts we use on a regular basis with organizations. So you fill this in as an organization to get an idea. So what is currently happening? Yeah, well, what are some of the things that we see in here? Now I put as many buzzwords on this one as possible, so because everyone is always looking at those. So the whole bring your own device and stuff, and SaaS and cloud and all those kind of things. For me, what is important here is the customer needs that is central in this graph. That's what we're looking at. When I use things with customers, I always look at, okay, these are customer needs. You can use MBOK, you can use some of the ITIL framework, use COBIT, etc. It doesn't matter. It is about customer needs, innovation, and customer service. Now, I live in a market where unemployment rate is pretty low. Alberta, with all the oil and gas, is we have, I think we're around 3% unemployment rate right now, which this definitely affects our market. And so that might be different than some of the other markets in the world, of course. But it really starts to drive different things. Different economic climate drives a different understanding of what we need to do. We often need to do ITSM projects really to manage the low amount of staff we have. So we need to look at not only cost reduction, but also doing more with limited staff. So all these kind of things we need to look at. These things we fill in with a customer and go on, okay, what is your internal trends, what are your outside trends? And then based on that, we can start making decisions. And the decisions are normally based on some of the principles behind this. One thing is the customer experience. I talked about that, and the VOCR stands for value, outcomes, cost, and risk. We often realize when we look at that customer experience, we need to clearly define the value. We need to clearly define the stories behind the experience of the customer. We also need to look at business priorities. We've got some great examples, and I'm using some oil and gas examples. I can use other examples as well, but the oil and gas examples kind of interesting because what we find in business priorities that a change in the market suddenly changes significantly what organizations need to focus on. We had several organizations that went from being a trust company, which is more focused on mergers and acquisitions, within a very short time frame, focusing on exploration. And the problem with that is that the IT focus needs to change along the way then. Leadership is important, and I'll briefly talk about that later on as well, with clear accountabilities, of course. And one of the things I find is we often talk about governance, and then the problem with governance is that we realize we're controlling things, and suddenly we realize that we need to be still agile and change on a regular basis. So one of the things we've seen is the statement, agility with integrity. So make sure that we're flexible and but still have this integrity in there from a consulting, from a governance perspective. So these are the things that we often see from Just Enough. So when I go into a customer and the different customers, I look at these kind of things. Where are the business priorities? Where is the leadership? Where is some of the agility we need and the flexibility we need? And how can we keep that in a very integral way? So those are some of the things I'm looking at. Now, based on this context and based on understanding what the principles are, we now need to start looking at how can we build roadmaps that really drive the right information from an IT service management perspective. So roadmap development for me is I find it always fun to do those kind of things. And one of the clear things is we all would love a road like this, a road with a very clear vision. We know exactly where we're going to. It is straight. We can actually we don't have to worry about anything. We're just going to these mountains, and hopefully, although this road for me it always looks like, are we ever going to get there or not? Now, eventually, you'll start to realize that that road is not as clear. So trying to get clarity in your vision. We unfortunately have significant curves in the road, which means changing requirements sometimes. And to be honest, a lot of us have a really foggy vision, and we have no clue where the next couple of months we're going to go to. Which is always, when I talk to some of the CIOs, etc., they all have something like, we have some sort of strategy. And then you ask what the strategy is, and then they say, well, we have some projects we're going to do this year. And I'm like, well, that's not really a vision. You need to really get that vision clear. Now, all of us in our market have understanding of ITIL. We have understanding of maybe COBIT, Lean IT, USMBOK, all the different frameworks, and all of them come back to the similar things. And I'm just using an ITIL chart here. I put the copyright statement in there, so it should be fine. But the key thing is what is the vision? That's normally what we're looking at, and then starting looking at where are we now, where do we want to be, and how do we get there, etc. And most of you might have seen this. If not, just look at an ITIL book, and you'll find it in the CSI book. Now, you can use other things like explore, assess, design, develop, implement, review. It depends a bit on how you want to approach this. But the roadmap development needs to have a clear vision. And then where are we now is quite often a very difficult stage for a lot of people. And then how to actually get there, those are some of the things we're building up. Now, the next slide, what I'm going to talk about is a few things, and there is so much I could talk about, and I'm going to focus on a few things that I've seen in just recently. So from where are we now, and this is the next one. One of the things I've seen on a regular basis, and the last 2 weeks there have been a lot of Twitter messages in my timeline around services, and specifically the service catalog. Although I don't really want to talk about the service catalog, I also always see that a lot of organizations are struggling with this and want to do this. So here a little bit of my view on this. I'm not saying it's the perfect view, but it has something to look into. Now, a lot of us are talking about defining services. And one of my biggest challenges with defining services in organizations is that we don't really see the context of which customers we're providing these services for, so which market spaces, and what our strategy is. So I normally help organizations more on the point of strategy. What is the strategy you want to accomplish? What are your customers, and how have you defined your customers? What is the customer experience you have? And then how that builds to services. And to be honest, some of the vendors have a tendency, okay, you need a service catalog, and my question always is, for what? For which customers? For what? To meet what kind of your strategy? So when we do roadmap development, it's really focused on that. So anyone who is starting to look at service catalog, and to be honest, service catalog means a lot of different things in the market, anywhere from a request catalog that is just simple service requests to really defining your services. You need to understand what the strategy is from your IT service provider perspective, but also what your customers require. And of course, in the middle there's the financial part. There is financial cost to all of this, and that will drive what you can and cannot do. So that's strategy. Now, we build strategies very simple. I hate large documents, and that may be because I'm partly because I'm originally Dutch and then moved to England. So I have two. I always say I have two second languages. One is Dutch and one is English. I don't have a first one anymore because I'm crappy in both of them. So I like to normally reduce the amount of things I have to write, because then I don't have to do a lot of focus on that. So what I do is I take a customer and say, okay, look, you have your vision. This is one of the charts we fill in normally for them, and it's a 4x8 feet chart that we use, and together we keep in a workshop. We get to these things. This is your vision. This is what you want to accomplish, and then these are all the different vision teams. Then you need to have the supporting ideas. You need to have the challenges. We actually look at that. We need the support for that, and the key thing for me is, what are the bold steps you want to take? Yeah, from an ITSM strategy perspective, how can we take certain steps to meet that vision? And this is coming back to the CSI approach I showed you earlier. It's really that simple. And the nice thing about this is, you have a 4x8 chart that you put on your wall, and you say, these are all the vision themes we have, and everyone understands that and sees that, and it's part of communication. And then the bold steps you want to take. Now, bold steps can be in any area. It could be in ITSM area, like incident and change, but it could also be, okay, we'll start building service catalogs. So that's what we normally do. The key thing is, I try to keep it simple, because for me, just enough is a key. I don't want a 20-page document. I maybe only want this image, and help people to move forward. These images normally are being used then in the organizations and put on the wall, and they start to realize, yeah, this is what we want to accomplish. So there's two things that you accomplish here: not only a simple representation of the vision and the strategy, but also an communication channel or communication use that people say, yeah, I understand this. So that's around ITSM strategy. The next part is some of the fundamentals. One of our challenges, our projects are all over the place. When I see different customers, either if it doesn't matter if it's government or if it's the oil and gas industry or even finance, etc., we often have different projects. We want to do something on the tool side. We want to do something on the process side. Sometimes those are split, and the problem with that is that we're building improvements in smaller areas and not in a larger area. So one of the fundamentals I normally do with a customer is saying, okay, let's build some very simple documents at the start to what you want to accomplish. Now, the next these ones, I'm not going to say that we do them for every single customer at every single moment, but I find I always want to talk about, okay, organizational design, and normally the first comment is, okay, we're not going to change the organizational structure. Which is fine, and later on we'll start to realize that we have to do it anyway, but I'm fine with skipping that sometimes. But there's always things like accountabilities, roles and responsibilities we need to clearly define. A lot of organizations try to avoid that as long as possible, but I like to bring that forward. The other thing is documentation. This is one of my scars I have on my back from a previous project, where we didn't really define what documentation needed to be, and to what level. And what you find is that there's a totally disconnect between what the customer wants from a documentation perspective and what you deliver. Now we see communication strategy, and some of the previous presenters already talked a lot about communication, so I'm not going to go in a lot of detail on that. Communication sometimes links to management of change strategy. I like education and training strategies, and I think that is a key part of making sure that we do the right things, training based on scenarios, etc. And then, of course, management information. Okay, what are we going to do with that? Interesting enough, we've built these for customers, and this looks like, okay, well, we're going to build here 5 documents, and it's 5 pages, 10 pages long. We've done this in half page, with just, this is what the policies are, this is what we're going to do. So thinking about those strategies, it doesn't have to have a lot of content to it, but gives you guidelines what to do. And the reason you limit the amount of maybe text in there, is to make sure that if things change, you can easily make adjustments to that. They can always, there's other policies like governance, like IT general controls you might need to include in there. But these are some of the strategies we use. Very simple, very clear, and okay, let's go and let's move forward with this. Now, I did talk about leadership, and I think leadership is one of the biggest challenges in a lot of our ITSM programs, that we don't really get the right leadership. We had one customer tell us, and I won't tell the name, but the statement that came by was, we don't need any of this idle crap. If we just hired good people, tell them what we want done, enable them to take action, we would be so much further ahead. And I think that is true. I'm not saying that idle is crap, that don't get me wrong, but it's the key thing here is we need to make sure that the people know what they're going to do. So sometimes we're focusing in our project too much on, okay, let's build processes or let's build technology, and it's coming back to the people side. Now, there's several presentations here that at TFT that I've partly listened to and already talked a lot about the people component. I think it's really important, but it's part of that leadership side. But I love this statement from this customer and saying, okay, let's just do it, and that's the key thing for me. Let's do it. Let's move forward. Let's do just enough so that we can get some improvements going. That means from a leadership perspective, we need to understand the consequences. This is a tweet by Paul Wilkinson. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the original tweet anymore. But it's personal ownership and accountability for the goals trumps process flows and technology, and that's normally what I see in the market as well. So spending a lot of time on process and spending a lot of time in technology is not always the right thing to do. Sometimes you do need to go and work with the people and make sure that they feel accountable for this. So from a perspective of scalability, I have to admit, since I started in the 1990s with ITIL and did my exam in 92, the first version of ITIL. And for years I was a process geek, and I fully admit that. And that process geek sometimes was focused too much on, you need to have process first before you can do technology. I saw the light eventually and realized that you cannot do any of this without understanding the people component, which was kind of natural, but also the technology component. I mean, there is no chance that we can do one of these just in a small environment and just say, okay, look, we're just doing technology or we're just doing process. You have to combine all of them. People components, I want to talk briefly about a few things that I like to do with customers that are simple, that are easy. One of the things is we sometimes have services, and this is a graph. I use this graph on a regular basis. This is also a cabinet office graph, but I have the tendency to put something different on the X part and the Y part, and just look at that. You can really, for any two elements, you can start looking at, okay, what does that mean? If I look at the capability of IT staff, and specifically on skills assessment, understanding what the capability of the IT staff is needs to be aligned to what the value of IT is for the business. If I have a very valuable ERP system for the business, then and the capability of the IT staff is limited, then I'm in a risky situation. If I have a lot of IT capabilities, like for instance mainframe skill sets, etc., and the business is not using it anymore, then it becomes an highly overdoing it, and we're not aligning the two. So I normally always look at what is the value of IT to the business and what are the skills we currently have, and that's something that constantly need to be adjusted. Again, you use this on a regular basis to start looking at, okay, what are we doing in this area, this function, do we really need this or do we need to change this? Now, technology side, so a little bit of people, the technology components for me is the key thing. I put some words on here like cloud, etc., and simplicity. I'm not really in the technology side, so I always have a problem with understanding really what the technology can do to an extent. I always have to ask people to do that. One of the things I see, it is not simple enough. We have so often that we're trying to do things with technology, and we've built things, and we need to have huge processes around it, and it doesn't give you the value you're looking for. Just enough technology is the key. I'm going to give you an example on incident management. Yes, I know it's maybe a simple process, but it's for a lot of people, this is where they're struggling with. For me, technology is for two reasons in incident management, for instance. I want to do monitoring and control, which means I want to know where every single incident is and who's working on it, but also some details on what is in that incident record. And that could be monitoring and control. That means I need to have it anytime, anywhere, because I want to make sure that I can access it. So it needs to be on mobile devices, but I need to be able to see the text and what people actually have done so far. That is one use. I normally have something like, okay, I don't care what you do there. You need to record certain things and keep track of it. For me, incident management, as an example here, reporting is so much more important for a lot of other processes. It doesn't matter if you look at problem management or CSI or even service level management, availability management, to all the way to BRM. The objective here is to look at clear reporting. But if you report, you need to do accurate reporting. So for me, the technology is used to do accurate reporting. That means I need to have certain fields in there. And this is where the simplicity comes in and where I say just enough. For me, 7 mandatory fields. Now you can argue if it's 7 or if it's 10 or if it's that, but it needs to be simple. And if I look at these fields, I can say, well, I want to have the name of the person, the organizational unit, the location where they're located, the service they have, and they're using, the component maybe that is affected by this. I want some priorities, a category, and work group. If I have these stories, and I can put timestamps, etc., with that, etc. But these are the fields that normally need to be filled in. This would tell the story of any incident. Very simple. Those are 7 fields that we need to have to tell the story of the incident, because now I can see, okay, I have a name and I know the location of the person, I know which service they're using, and I know exactly which work group is working on. From a reporting perspective, I can now start looking at this work group, how many priority 1 incidents did they have, how many services have priority 1 incidents. So if I have this information correct, then I have really valuable information in incident management. Anything else like free format fields, etc., are not going to really work because I can't do reporting on that. Now, I saw an interesting Twitter discussion, and I'm hoping that I think it eventually went to Facebook as well, the Back to ITSM group. And one of the things that people say, well, let's do hashtags for category. And my challenge with that is that if you start building hashtags and you make it free format, then reporting, I don't know what to report anymore, because some people will use this hashtag and some people will use another hashtag. And that becomes very, very difficult from a reporting perspective and getting quality information out of that. So for me, it is important that we clearly define what this is. Any of these I normally use with companies. I say you need to have a maximum of 10 options for each of these fields, and it's a big field, and then you have to choose one of them, and there is no other. Why 10? If you look at psychology studies, if we give people a set of information and also a set of items to select an item from based on that information, they can select it only about between 5 and 9 items, and they can always select the right one. Anything more than 9, you will start to see that they select on a regular basis only the items they really want to have. So the key thing is, if you put too many categories in there, if you put too many services in there, it's going to be very difficult for people to select the right one. Now, some of you might say, well, yeah, but I can't do that because then I don't have enough reporting capabilities because I have 40 categories I want to report on. Yes, you might be able to do tiered systems, etc., if required, but in a lot of cases we have enough information if we keep it simple. And it's more a matter of, okay, what do we really need? So for me, this is just enough. This works for organizations to keep it simple. Now, different processes have different requirements. Different processes have different requirements for a lot of different things, not only from a field perspective and reporting perspective, but also, and this is where we go into process documentation, from a process documentation perspective. So if I look at process documentation, and some of you might say, yeah, this is, I've seen this before in, for instance, ISO 9000. You have on a high level, you say, yeah, I'm using ITIL, and then I have process guides, and then I have quick reference guides, and then I have work instructions, and the process documentation becomes more detailed. This is the same thing as with the incident example. You start to go into a lot of detail sometimes. That is not necessary. I've seen organizations working on a very detailed work instruction level where no one actually ever uses it. So you need to, when you start doing a strategy for documentation, realize that sometimes you need to stay on a process guide level or very high quick reference guide, and that's about it. Depends on culture, depends on technology, depends on the skills of staff. There's a lot of different things that influence that. So that means that for certain processes, I will stay on a very high level. If I do service level management, I might have a slide set of 5 slides and say this is the process. If I do incident management and I have to have a lot of service desk agents that need guidance on how to exactly do, because there's a lot of turnover, etc., you might have to go to work instructions. So per process, we can make the documentation more detailed. Per process, we can keep it, for some processes, we keep it very high level. This is a strategy I talked about earlier, and we work with customers to, for each process, to say how detailed do we need to get. If you don't go to the right level of detail, people will get frustrated, and you need to have commitment on that. So that's from a process documentation perspective. So you have reporting requirements, then you need to define what the process documentation is. One slide, and this next slide I'm just using here to give you an idea. I'm not going to in detail on that, but there's several processes nowadays where we say let's not use process management, but actually start looking at adaptive case management. And I think there's some other presentations that will address this as well. But the path of execution cannot completely be predefined. Human judgment and external events and interactions will alter the flow, which means sometimes, and I do this for change, for instance, very high level process flow. And these are some of the policies and guidelines we have. So instead of building a really detailed change process, we keep it very high level. And within the different activities, you just say, okay, look, whatever you do, whatever order you do this, I don't care, as long as the end result of this step is going to be done. That helps, again, with organizations to drive improvements very fast into the organization. Now, the last part of this presentation is CSI. For me, CSI is not a crime scene investigation, of course, but I like this image. It's a CSI mindset. Anything I showed you regarding reporting and documentation and leadership, etc., we normally drive from a CSI perspective. And I just recently had one of my customers say, yeah, we don't want to do CSI yet because we would like to do some processes first, and because that's more valuable. We want to do incident and change implementation. And I have something like, but CSI is the one that you should start with. Now, a while back, I wrote a brief article around CSI and how do you set it up. And again, we do that from a just enough perspective. Very simple, very easy. We built what we call an CSI unit, and we said, okay, let's do a CSI meeting. Let's talk to stakeholders. Let's define the scope and objective of this agenda, set some ground rules and supporting documentation. And stakeholders really mean is that we need to figure out who is going to be involved in the CSI meeting. Sometimes you start with process people, process owners, process managers. You get them together. Sometimes we use service owners in the group or technical units. it doesn't matter really what it is, but you get a group together and say, okay, look, this is what we're going to accomplish. I normally use what I call the 6P model, although there are too many P words really in ITIL. So the key thing here is I'm looking at people, process, product, and partners, and it's really around the performance you want to have. What I do is, okay, what is the purpose of this this meeting? What is happening here? What is the strategy we want to accomplish? What is the current performance issues that we have? And then let's drive towards what are some of the people issues, the process issues, the product issues, and the partner issues that drive this issue in the overall performance. This is we use this based on the Apollo 13 simulation that we use together with Paul Wilkinson, and that's where it normally is being shown. But then we start using this in organizations. And I've had 30-minute meetings with a CSI team where we had one issue, and within those 30 minutes we came up, yeah, there's a process issue there, there's a product or tool issue there, and we need to train some of the staff. And within a very simple meeting, we got to a very clear objective. This is what we want to improve, and that was linked to what the customer required, because the key thing is any improvement needs to be defined, but also needs to show what the customer value is. And then you get out of that expected outcomes and the cost of solving the issue, and of course the risk of not solving the issue. Now, so I talked a bit about a few concepts of what we do at Just Enough and keep things simple. So it's anywhere from reporting, very simple, making sure that you get the right information, documentation that is very simple, all the way to CSI that we sometimes implement in a couple of weeks to get people going and people moving forward. The problem is, I think, and I love this image, we try most of the time to do too much, and we do all the heavy lifting in an ITSM program, and we realize that if we don't do this correctly, we might explode. And that's sometimes that we need to be very, very careful of that. Yes, there is a lot of work in ITSM, but we take it one step at a time and do this very carefully. So I would like to thank you for listening to me. Hopefully this was useful. I think I kept within the time, so hopefully this is valuable for everyone. If you want to reach me, feel free to connect with me on Twitter or through Facebook, Back to ITSM page.
Very nice. Do you want to unshare your screen? There you go.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Did I? Here we go.
Yeah, I've got the toys. So, so I liked your 5 strategies: organizational design, documentation, communication, education, training, and I think the last one was management information.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I normally put reporting to make it clear, but management likes to hear that it's management information because then they feel more important.
Yeah. So education and training seems to be a hot topic with folks today, and I'd like to expound on that. Why I pull up some of your tweets from today's session. Your organization focuses on education, training, consulting, and a bunch of other things. How do you see education and training evolving over the next 12 to 36 months?
I see 2 different things here. So for me, education and training are 2 separate things. That's the first thing. Education for me is learning new frameworks, understanding what is happening there. So I normally explain, I mean, I can do this here, I think. I normally explain, and people will have not heard this before, the difference between education and training is when your teenager comes home from school and says, well, I had sex education, you were so happy that it wasn't sex training. That's the difference for me. So education I see around the frameworks. I could have used that something else, but I thought you would be. Let's not go there. The other thing is So framework training, qualification training is one part of this. I think it has limited value in a lot of organizations. I think training is really what we need to look for. We need to combine the people, roles, and responsibilities with the process they work in, with the tool they're using, and based on scenarios. So when we do training, it's more around, okay, this is a major incident. What do you exactly do? What is your role in there, etc. That is the valuable part of training. Education, to be honest, yeah, we're in the business of doing all these ITIL qualifications on Lean AT, etc. It has limited value for a lot of people. We've trained one organization, about 500 people or so, in ITIL Foundation, and what do you get out of that is similar.
You get 500 people who have 3 days off.
Yes, well, I don't think people see it as 3 days off. They just see it as 3 days. Really,
that's how I saw it. So.
It's normally cramming for 3 days and just being frustrated that you have to do an exam at the end. Does it add value? Yes, absolutely. Is it cost effective? No, absolutely not. I'd rather tell the customer I'm not going to do that than I'm doing very clearly training sessions.
So some comments. We've got Dave Van Halpern said, nice to see you talking about business model canvas. And then a reference to Paul Wilkinson talking about VOCR.
Yep.
Antonio is coming up next. We've got an excellent down-to-earth Dutch guidance. I'm not sure if Dutch guidance is different than regular guidance. Can you tell me what Dutch guidance is? Okay, what I've people have been telling me is that Dutch are sometimes very direct and tell you exactly how it is. That's what they tell Americans.
Yeah, I think we're doing it differently. I don't know. I think, to be honest, Americans...
We do it with French fries in our mouth.
Yeah. No, but the key thing I find is that in North America, we quite often might say sort of very direct things. The Dutch sometimes really drives directly to the point and say, well, that's wrong. That's one thing. And to be honest, in the mid-90s, if you didn't speak Dutch, you were no one in ITIL, really. It's because ITIL was really driven there. So everyone I knew that was in the ITIL field did understand Dutch as well. So that has changed, I can tell you that.
What's the language for professionals today?
I'm wondering about that because yes, there's a lot of people that from an English perspective, but I think it will change very quickly. I'm glad to see the next two presentations are Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but for me it's awesome that we're now getting it into different languages. How long it will take till China figures this out and starts to have use that as well? Yeah,
TFT 17 is completely in Mandarin.
That would be awesome. Because I want to retire by then.
Okay, so big shout out to Vladimir, who chimed in and said, great, just enough presentation, 7 mandatory fields, so thank you for that. Any thoughts or feelings on what you've seen so far or the rest of today's speakers?
Well, to be honest, I've a bit of a busy week this week. I'm actually teaching and managing across the life cycle course during the day, so I had only a few snippets I saw for the presentations. Plus, I had a birthday yesterday and I have a birthday on Friday, so I've seen some of them. I caught the end of Patrick's presentation. I need to look at them, but I saw April Allen's. I really liked that part. Saw some of the other ones. I need to look at a few that I'm really interested in. So, well, but it's awesome. I really enjoy that this is being done. It's great.
Thank you, and shout out to Earl Bagley who went out there and shared your session. So coming up next, like we said, we've got 2 sessions in Spanish. I can't even say this, but I'll try. Nosotros señores dos pontes hablan en Castilian en el mundo no se una única lengua y en el TFT tampoco.
You don't have an automatic translator for yourself? That you just...
Dude, if I were to... No, I do have a Zen box, though. So, like, if things get too stressed, I just turn this on and it ohms at me.
That mightn't be necessary, yes.
All right, Peter, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and bring on our next speaker. And everybody hold on for transmission.
Great, thanks.